affection he bears to the learned, I will venture to swear you will need no wings to make you fly to behold this new and auspicious star. If you could see how here all the world is rejoicing in the possession of so great a prince, how his life is all their desire, you could not contain your tears for sheer joy. The heavens laugh, the earth exults. Avarice is expelled from the country, extortion is put down, liberality scatters riches with a bountiful hand. Yet our king does not desire gold, gems, or precious metals, but virtue, glory, immortality. To his contemporaries, Henry VIII was the embodiment of kingship. Thomas More's coronation eulogy states that, among 1,000 noble companions, the king stands out the tallest, and his strength fits his majestic body. There is fiery power in his eyes, beauty in his face, and the colour of twin roses in his cheeks. Other evidence proves that this was not just mere flattery. Henry's skeleton, discovered in 1813, was 6 feet 2 inches in length. He was certainly of strong and muscular build. The Spanish ambassador reported in 1507 that his limbs are of a gigantic size. In youth he was slim and broad-shouldered. His armour of 1512 has a waist measurement of 32 inches, while that of 1514 measures 35 with a 42-inch chest. Several sources testify to Henry's fair skin, among them the poet John Skelton, who called him Adonis of fresh colour. His hair, strands of which still adhered to his skull in 1813, was auburn, and he wore it combed short and straight in the French fashion. For many years he remained clean-shaven. In visage, the young king resembled his handsome grandfather Edward IV, with his broad face, small, close-set penetrating eyes, and small sensual mouth. Henry, however, had a high-bridged nose. He was, wrote a Venetian envoy in 1516, the handsomest prince ever seen, an opinion in which most contemporaries concurred. The young Henry enjoyed robust good health and was a man of great energy and drive. He had a low boredom threshold and was never still or quiet. His physician, Dr. John Chamber, described him as cheerful and gamesome, for he was quick to laugh and enjoyed a jest. One Venetian called him prudent, sage, and free from every vice, and indeed it seemed so in 1509, for Henry was idealistic, open-handed, liberal, and genial. Complacency, self-indulgence, and vanity appeared to be his worst sins. He was an unabashed show-off, and shamelessly solicited the flattery of others. He was also highly strung, emotional, and suggestible. Only as he grew older did the suspicious and crafty streaks in his nature become more pronounced. Nor were his willfulness, arrogance, ruthlessness, selfishness, and brutality yet apparent, for they were masked by an irresistible charm and affable manner. Kings were expected to be masterful, proud, self-confident, and courageous, and Henry had all these qualities in abundance, along with a massive ego and a passionate zest for life. He combined the Renaissance ideal of the man of many talents with the qualities of the medieval chivalric heroes whom he so much admired. He was simple and candid by nature, and used no worse oath than "by St. George." A man of impulsive enthusiasms, he could often be naive. Decision-making did not come easily to Henry. It was his habit to sleep and dream upon the matter and give an answer in the morning. But once his mind was made up, he always judged himself as the Lord's anointed to be in the right. Then, if an angel was to descend from heaven, he would not be able to persuade him to the contrary. Cardinal Wolsey was later to warn, "Be well advised what ye put in his head, for ye shall never pull it out again." Few could resist Henry's charisma. "The king has a way of making every man feel that he is enjoying his special favour," wrote Thomas More. Erasmus called Henry the man most full of heart. He would often put his arm around a man's shoulder to put him at his ease, although he could not abide to have any man stare in his face when he talked with them. There are many examples of his kindness to others, as will be seen. Yet the king also had a spectacular and unpredictable temper, and in a rage could be terrifying indeed. He was also very jealous of his honour, both as king and as a knight, and had the tenderest yet most flexible of consciences. His contemporaries thought him extraordinarily virtuous, a lover of goodness, truth, and justice, just as he was always to see himself. Because the young king was not quite 18, his father's mother, the Venerable Lady Margaret Beaufort, Countess of Richmond and Derby, acted as regent during the first 10 weeks of the reign. Lady Margaret had exercised considerable influence over the upbringing of her grandson, since it had been she and not Henry's mother, Elizabeth of York, who had been in charge of the domestic arrangements in Henry VII's household. And it was she who had been entrusted with perfecting Edward IV's series of ordinances for the regulation of the royal household. The procedures she established would continue to be enforced throughout Henry VIII's reign and beyond, and they covered, amongst other things, the rules to be observed in the royal nurseries. The Lady Margaret was now a frail, nun-like widow of 66, renowned for her piety, learning, and charitable works, yet her influence was formidable. She had been an inveterate intriguer during the Wars of the Roses, and had outlived 4 husbands. After the king, she held more lands than anyone else in the kingdom. Henry VII, born when she was only 13, was her only child, and she had been utterly devoted to him. That devotion extended to her grandchildren, whose education she probably supervised. For this she was admirably qualified, being a generous benefactor of scholarship and the foundress of Christ's College and St. John's College at Cambridge. A patron of William Caxton, she was both a lover of books and a true intellectual. She was also an ascetic, wearing a severe widow's barb up to her chin and a hair shirt beneath her black robes, and her rigorous religious regime represented the harsher aspects of medieval piety. From her, the prince inherited his undoubted intellectual abilities and a conventional approach to religious observance. Henry had been born on the 28th of June, 1491, and was created Duke of York at the age of 3. His 17th century biographer, Lord Herbert of Cherbury, who had access to sources lost to us, claimed that Henry VII intended his second son to enter the church and had him educated accordingly. Certainly Henry was pious and very well grounded in theology. Yet on the death of his elder brother, Arthur, in 1502, he became Prince of Wales and heir to the throne. The death of his mother, Elizabeth of York, in 1503, seems to have affected him deeply. In 1507, having learned of the death of Duke Philip of Burgundy, he confided to Erasmus that, "Never, since the death of my dearest mother, hath there come to me more hateful intelligence. It seemed to tear open again the wound to which time had brought insensibility." Henry was very well educated in the classical humanist fashion. Thomas More later asked, "What may we not expect from a king who has been nourished on philosophy and the 9 muses?" The poet John Skelton was the prince's tutor for a time, as was William Hone, of whom little is known. Skelton may have owed his appointment to Margaret Beaufort, for he was a Cambridge man, a Latin classicist in holy orders. He had been appointed Poet Laureate by the Universities of Cambridge, Oxford, and Louvain, and was described by Erasmus as that incomparable light and ornament of British letters. He had probably been Henry's first teacher, for he claimed, The honour of England I learned to spell in dignity royal, at that doth excel. I gave him drink of the sugared well of Helice